Welcome back to the deep dive. If you're tracking global security and especially technological shifts, you know that the fundamental concept of warfare has gone through a seismic change.
It really has.
I mean, a few decades ago, military strategy was all about controlling ground, right?
Uh-huh.
Massing tanks, drawing lines on these big physical maps.
Clear objectives, clear front lines.
Exactly. Today, that battlefield is, well, it's not just physical terrain anymore. It's invisible, it's multidimensional, and it moves at the speed of light.
It's a tectonic shift in strategic philosophy, and that's not an exaggeration. We're talking about institutions, entire military forces that were literally forged in the crucible of conventional, border conflicts.
Right.
And then the subsequent internal security challenges.
Yeah.
Now they have to fundamentally re-engineer their entire strategic identity. The strength of an army.
Yeah.
It's just no longer defined by its boots on the ground or its inventory of heavy metal.
It can't be.
It has to be defined by its ability to adapt and maneuver across a whole spectrum of threats and all at the same time.
That adaptability, that's precisely what we're unpacking today. Our source material, compiled in a series tracking the development of the Pakistani military establishment, specifically titled The Generals of Pakistan, it documents this monumental strategic evolution.
It's a fascinating look inside.
It is. We're looking at a system that consciously transitioned away from a reliance on these traditional, almost post-colonial defense models and moved toward mastering the really sophisticated, multidimensional threats of hybrid warfare, cyberspace, and what they call the ultimate frontier, AI and space command.
And for you, our listener, our mission here is to give you the essential analysis, kind of the critical shortcut to understanding this incredibly complex institutional transformation. We are moving our focus entirely.
Shifting the lens.
Completely. We're shifting the analytical lens from studying troop movements and logistical chains to examining algorithms, communication protocols, and strategic narratives. Because the underlying principle that weaves through all the decisions of every leader we're going to cover today it's stark and it's clear. In the modern conflict environment, information is the key weapon. And increasingly, truth itself is the primary target.
Okay, let's unpack that premise. That's a huge statement. Because before we even look at the generational strategies, we have to get a handle on the sheer scope of this new battlefield. It dictates absolutely everything that follows.
It really does.
Our sources are just so explicit on this. The scope of conflict has mutated. Wars are no longer only fought on defined physical borders. For a military force that traditionally saw its duty as defending lines drawn in the sand, I mean, that conceptual leap must have been massive.
Oh, absolutely. The idea that an attack can come from anywhere, at any time, through any medium, it requires a huge shift in organizational culture.
And it isn't just a semantic shift, right? It's not just words.
Not at all.
Yeah.
It dictates resource allocation. It dictates strategic prioritization. The contemporary definition of conflict, as it's laid out in this source material, details 4 distinct theaters of war that are they're completely intertwined.
Okay, so let's walk through them. What's the first?
First, and maybe the most disruptive to old-school military thinking, is that wars are fought in cyberspace.
And when we say cyberspace, we need to be clear. We're not just talking about, hacking a government website and defacing it.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Not at all. This is about critical national infrastructure. It is infrastructure warfare.
So paralyzing a power grid.
Paralyzing power grids, disrupting banking systems, compromising military command and control networks, even stealing sensitive intellectual property on a massive scale.
Wow.
It's the ability to inflict enormous economic and functional damage without ever deploying a single conventional soldier. The threat here is systemic disruption. It's designed to break the nation from the inside out.
Okay, so that's theater number 1. The second one you mentioned takes us directly into the cognitive space, the battleground of public opinion.
Exactly. Wars are now fought on social media.
The ideological and psychological battleground.
That's it. Here, the goal isn't to damage servers. It's to damage societal trust and cohesion. You use disinformation campaigns, deepfakes, targeted psychological operations, all deployed to erode public confidence in state institutions.
And to find those cracks in society and just drive a wedge into them.
Precisely. Exacerbate existing social fault lines, and ultimately reduce the population's will to resist. In this theater, every single citizen with a smartphone is both a potential combatant and a primary target.
That's a chilling thought. Okay, so we have cyberspace and social media. The next 2 theaters you mentioned take us into the ultimate high ground.
They do. Third, wars are fought in satellites. Control over orbital space and our communication links. It's now paramount.
Orbital assets are the lifeblood of everything modern, really. Communication, navigation, intelligence.
All of it. So losing control of your satellites or having them jammed or compromised, it's like going blind and deaf in the middle of a fight. This is the domain of anti-satellite weaponry, of space warfare. The battle space literally extends into orbit now.
Which all ties back to the final theater you mentioned. Wars are fought in minds.
Yes.
This isn't just about winning a skirmish anymore. It's about winning the narrative so definitively that the enemy's will to fight is just broken before the first kinetic engagement even happens.
And what's truly fascinating is the operational paradox this creates for a conventional military force. The source notes that this army was, and I'm quoting here, forged in conventional wars.
Right, where the metrics were clear, ground captured, enemies neutralized.
Exactly. But its current urgent focus is on mastering the invisible war of the future. Imagine the training, the budget reallocation, the massive institutional cultural change required when your highest priority shifts from buying a new tank model to recruiting experts in predictive analytics or quantum cryptography.
That transition, that's what signals the end of the focus on pure traditional ammunition, on explosive firepower. It marks the absolute primacy of information and these AI-driven command systems.
The whole strategic calculus has changed. In this new hybrid environment, how many secured servers you operate or how quickly your AI can analyze and respond to a threat, that often matters far more than how many physical forts you hold.
So if we connect this back to that idea of comprehensive resilience, the strategic picture gets a lot clearer.
It does. In hybrid conflicts, an effective strike in cyberspace, say, targeting the national energy grid, that might paralyze a logistical chain across the entire country before a single conventional shot is fired on land.
Which means the defense strategy has to be multidimensional.
It's the only way. You have to simultaneously secure the land, protect the air, ensure the integrity of the digital domain, and, crucially, maintain the stability of the societal and political infrastructure. If you only defend the physical border,
You're guaranteed to lose.
you are guaranteed to lose the war being fought in the cloud and in the cognitive space.
So, the foundation of modern strategy, as we're seeing it evolve in this deep dive, it's rooted in recognizing that the threat is now pervasive. It crosses all these domains seamlessly, but this wasn't some sudden awakening, was it?
Not at all.
It was a painstaking generational process of intellectual and institutional adaptation, and that journey starts with the very concept of strategic intellect.
That's right.
To begin this journey through the generations, we have to start with Field Marshal Ayub Khan. His tenure, from what I'm reading, was less about immediate tactical victories and more about laying the fundamental groundwork for intellectual strategy.
That's a perfect summary. He recognized early on that an army cannot effectively adapt to a rapidly changing global future if it doesn't first institutionalize the capacity to think strategically, deeply and long term.
What stands out in the sources about him is this intense focus on professionalization and institutionalization.
Yes, exactly. He wasn't satisfied with just having, charismatic battlefield commanders. He wanted systems. Systems that produced perpetual, adaptable strategic thought, ensuring resilience beyond the lifespan of any single leader.
It's about embedding intellectual muscle into the military's DNA.
That's the perfect phrase for it.
And this vision, it led directly to the creation of Pakistan's first high-level defense institutions, all dedicated specifically to conceptualizing strategy. It formalized the idea that thinking was just as important as fighting.
Specifically, the source highlights the establishment of dedicated GHQ planning divisions, general headquarters. Before this, strategic thought often operated in a highly reactive, almost ad hoc manner.
Focus on immediate threats, based on past fights.
Right. Establishing these divisions moves strategic thinking from being just a reaction to an external threat into a formalized, proactive, institutionalized, and, even bureaucratic process.
What does that shift from reactive to proactive really mean in practical terms for a military establishment of that size?
It means you dedicate a significant cohort of your most senior, most intellectual officers, not to immediate operational command, but to future gazing.
Future gazing, I like that.
Their mandate wasn't just to prepare for the next war, but to analyze technological trajectories, to forecast geopolitical shifts 10, 15 years out, and to conceptualize threats that didn't even exist yet.
So this provided the military with a crucial institutional memory and a futures capability.
Exactly. They could start preparing resource allocation for capabilities like advanced communication or early missile defense long before they became immediate necessities.
And hand in hand with these structural divisions came the cultivation of a strategic studies culture, right? Which sounds a bit like importing academia directly into the barracks.
It is, and it's a crucial step. It meant fostering an environment where defense strategy was treated as a serious academic and intellectual pursuit. It required rigorous research, continuous debate, wargaming, complex scenario planning.
It was a deliberate move away from just relying on battlefield experience and conventional wisdom.
Precisely. By engaging with complex theory and global trends, they ensured that the military leadership wasn't just trained in tactics, but was educated in grand strategy.
And there's this guiding principle that Ayub Khan articulated that just perfectly encapsulates this entire shift. He said, strategy is intellect in uniform.
That phrase is foundational. It really is. It suggests that intellectual rigor, curiosity, the capacity for abstract thought, these are not just supplemental qualities. They are as essential to a professional soldier as discipline, courage, or marksmanship.
This was the era where the highest echelons of command recognized that future wars would be won not just by firepower,
But by superior cognition.
and that intellectual capacity, it established the core philosophical basis for Pakistan's entire military evolution. Without that initial institutionalization, all the subsequent technological shifts we're about to discuss, AI, quantum computing, they would have been impossible to absorb or implement meaningfully.
They would have had no framework to fit into.
It's the shift from traditional paper maps and physical boundaries to embracing digital algorithms and these abstract concepts of hybrid warfare.
You can really view Ayub Khan as the master architect. He built the foundation and installed the essential motherboard, the intellectual framework, upon which all subsequent generations could install increasingly complex and futuristic processors.
The technological and ideological layers.
Exactly. This institutional capacity to learn and adapt. That's the silent legacy that enabled everything else that came after.
So once the strategic mind was formalized, the next big challenge was securing the most intangible asset of all, the national spirit.
A much harder problem.
If Ayub Khan provided the intellectual infrastructure for the military to think strategically, General Zia-ul-Haq introduced this expansive, almost boundless concept of defense.
The element of psychological and ideological resilience.
Yes. He seemed to grasp, decades before global information warfare became a common term, that the true target of future conflicts would be the collective national mind, not just the physical border.
And this is a pivotal strategic expansion. It moves the defense perimeter inward, right into society itself. The logic is, it's chillingly modern.
How so?
Well, if your enemies, whether they're state or non-state actors, are aiming to destabilize your nation from within through targeted propaganda, disinformation, erosion of cultural unity, then relying on tanks and planes is completely insufficient.
The defense has to be built internally.
Exactly. You have to provide a layer of resistance against that psychological penetration.
And the source focuses specifically on the development of ideological resilience during this time. So how is the strategic concept translated into actual military and state policy?
It involved an explicit policy choice, linking national defense with a deeply embedded and shared faith system. The strategy was to fuse national identity, cultural integrity, and security with religious belief.
The goal being to create a non-physical defense mechanism.
A cognitive immune system. That's the perfect term for it. An immune system against ideological intrusion and foreign psychological operations that are designed to fragment the society.
That is a massive strategic investment into the social fabric itself. It basically positions belief as a military asset.
It does. It weaponizes narrative, but internally aimed at hardening the population against external influence. Information and state-backed narrative, what some would call propaganda, were consciously built up as tools of national strength.
So the thinking was, if the population is perceived by the enemy as ideologically unified and morally resolute,
it makes any attempts at psychological subversion and hybrid warfare significantly more resource-intensive and much less likely to succeed. The state viewed any fragility in national identity as a strategic weakness that foreign adversaries would inevitably try to exploit.
let's delve a little deeper into that strategic mechanism. How did this actually manifest in the day-to-day functioning of the defense establishment?
It meant that communication and cultural institutions, which were previously seen as separate from defense strategy, were now viewed as integral components of national security.
So resources were channeled into crafting a consistent, unifying national narrative.
A narrative that emphasized cohesion and shared values. And look, this wasn't just about winning hearts and minds in a passive sense. This was about ensuring cognitive immunity. It was about providing a powerful, decentralized psychological defense that operates at the individual level across millions of citizens.
And the ultimate conceptual guide that was derived from this era is truly striking. The quote is, "Belief is the ultimate firewall." I mean, that is a profound strategic metaphor for national defense.
It speaks volumes, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It's this realization that physical firewalls, they protect data. But only a cohesive, resolute national belief system can defend the collective mind against targeted disinformation campaigns and internal societal subversion.
It's a strategic layer that ensures the nation has any internal fortitude to withstand external psychological pressures that are designed to foment internal conflict.
This segment really highlights the adoption of psychological and ideological tools as core, non-negotiable elements of defense strategy. They're positioned right alongside conventional forces.
A tank defends a patch of dirt.
But the firewall of belief defends the integrity of the state itself.
Exactly. It solidifies the second essential layer built upon Ayub's intellectual foundation. So now the military had the intellectual framework from Ayub and the ideological justification and resilience from Zia.
Which was needed to navigate a conflict that was becoming more and more political and narrative-driven.
The stage was perfectly set for the next big leap, integrating the emerging digital revolution.
Right. So with the intellectual capacity formalized and that ideological resilience reinforced, General Pervez Musharraf's era brings the military establishment directly into the modern information age.
And this was a necessary integration. It was forced on them by the rapid globalization of media, the advent of 247 satellite television, and of course, the burgeoning internet.
The challenge, I assume, was how to integrate this digital realm without losing the strategic gains of the previous generations. It was a monumental strategic challenge, because this explosion of information flow, suddenly unfiltered, instantaneous, it could either be a fatal weakness, eroding the narrative control that Zia had established, or it could be a powerful new tool.
And the response was this fascinating dual strategy that, on the surface, looked almost contradictory.
It really did.
So that dual strategy is the key here. How did the military manage this societal pressure for more openness while at the same time maintaining strategic security? It sounds like an impossible balancing act.
It was an exercise in what you could call controlled engagement. So on one hand, the government moved toward media liberalization. It allowed private media channels to flourish, signaling a societal opening toward greater freedom of information.
Which was a critical step in adapting to global norms and allowing for internal debate.
It was.
So that's opening the gates. But where were the security cameras installed at the same time?
The security cameras, as you put it, were the simultaneous creation and formalization of strategic communication cells within the armed forces. And we need to be clear, these were not traditional PR departments.
Right.
These cells were designed to understand, to monitor, to analyze, and to actively participate in the emerging digital and media dialogue. Their whole mandate was to ensure the military could present its perspective, counter misinformation instantly, and proactively manage its own narrative in a 247 news cycle.
So this marks the explicit recognition that the modern battlefield had expanded decisively beyond geography. It wasn't just about protecting physical borders anymore.
No, now they had to protect the narrative space surrounding those borders and the national discourse inside the country.
And this realization, it must have necessitated the development of more sophisticated modern tools and tactics.
It absolutely did. The source points heavily to the establishment of electronic surveillance capabilities. These became vital not just for traditional espionage, but for monitoring the digital threat environment, for tracing malicious cyber activities, and ensuring internal stability in the face of rapidly spread digital agitation.
And crucially, the formalization of digital diplomacy. This is where those strategic communication cells really start leveraging digital platforms not just for domestic messaging, but for projecting influence and managing international perception.
Yes, digital diplomacy at this stage meant bypassing the slow, traditional channels of embassy cables and official statements.
It's about direct engagement.
Direct engagement with global audiences, with foreign think tanks, all via the internet. And it was often aimed at rapidly countering international misinformation following key security events, like a cross-border incident or a large-scale anti-terrorism operation.
And that speed was critical. If you wait 24 hours to respond to something,
The adversary's narrative is already fact in the minds of the global public. You've lost before you've even started.
Can you give us a practical example of the tension inherent in this dual strategy, the liberalization versus the control?
Certainly. Liberalization meant that the government lost absolute control over the information flow domestically, which, created internal political challenges. However, the strategic communication cells were designed to use that very openness externally.
Oh, so.
They could present the military's perspective as one voice among many in what looked like a democratic-leaning environment. That makes the message more credible to international partners than if it came from a state-controlled monopoly. It was about turning the perceived weakness of open media into a strategic asset for global narrative management.
The ultimate lesson derived from this era, it summarizes the whole segment perfectly. Modern warfare begins with information, not ammunition. The kinetic response is now secondary to the informational response.
The age of preemptive digital strategy had arrived. A bullet or a shell might be obsolete before a coordinated disinformation campaign is even fully deployed.
The strategic priorities shifted.
It shifted to winning the information war, securing the narrative and the digital infrastructure, before the kinetic war even had a chance to escalate. This third layer provided the operational capability to fight effectively in the digital realm. Now, with all that groundwork complete, we can finally leap into the hyper-technological present.
Field Marshal Syed Munir's current leadership marks the institutional entry into what the source emphatically calls the ultimate frontier. This is the domain where defense is no longer about managing current technology, but aggressively embracing and developing the technologies that will define all future conflicts. Space command, integrated AI, and quantum security.
This really represents the full culmination of the intellectual and digital groundwork laid by all the previous generations. We're no longer talking about just reacting to the internet age. We are discussing the full embrace of the future warfighting ecosystem.
The focus has moved beyond mere cyber defense.
Way beyond. It's about leveraging technology that provides unparalleled surveillance capability, strategic speed, and ultimate data security.
Let's detail this technology stack, because this is where the resources of those GHQ planning divisions that Ayub Khan set up are finally being deployed to their full potential. First up, AI-powered surveillance. What does this mean in a military context beyond, just recognizing faces?
It signifies a massive transition from passive monitoring to active predictive intelligence. AI-powered surveillance means moving beyond humans manually reviewing drone footage or listening to communications intercepts.
It's about systems.
It's about systems capable of processing vast, multi-source data streams in real time, identifying complex patterns of life, detecting subtle anomalies that indicate hostile intent, and most importantly, using predictive analytics to forecast potential adversary movements or attack vectors far faster and more accurately than any human analysis team could ever manage.
And coupled with that is drone autonomy. This moves way beyond just remote-controlled aerial vehicles, right?
Absolutely. Drone autonomy, or what they call swarming technology, it speaks to the future of unmanned aerial and ground systems that can operate semi-independently in highly contested environments.
Which shifts the risk calculation in tactical operations dramatically.
Completely. It allows for the rapid deployment of sophisticated surveillance or strike packages into areas that are just too risky for manned aircraft. And they often require minimal human input once the mission parameters are set. This drastically reduces the response time in fast-moving tactical scenarios.
And then underpinning all of this are the foundational defense mechanisms, sophisticated cyber resilience systems. This is the defense against the enemy's own AI and quantum capabilities.
It's a continuous digital arms race. Cyber resilience systems are what ensure that your core national infrastructure and your military command systems can withstand continuous, sophisticated digital assaults. This involves everything from active defense mechanisms that identify and eject intruders in milliseconds to advanced network segmentation that prevents any single breach from becoming a catastrophic failure.
But what is maybe the most significant strategic overhaul under Munir is the modernization of the Army's entire intelligence architecture. Tell us more about the integration of predictive analytics.
The integration of predictive analytics is about fundamentally altering the intelligence cycle itself. Historically, intelligence was focused on the who, what, and where of past or current events.
Looking backwards.
Right. Predictive analytics uses AI and big data to tell commanders what will happen next. It provides probabilities and high-confidence threat assessments. This allows the command structure to dramatically tighten what's called the ODA Loop, observe, orient, decide, act.
By shortening the orientation and decision phases.
Exactly. It gives them a crucial temporal advantage in a high-speed conflict environment.
And this predictive power, it requires constant input, which is where real-time satellite imagery comes in. The eye in the sky has to be constant.
That's the vital input stream. Real-time satellite imagery and high-resolution spatial intelligence provide an instantaneous data flow into the centralized command structure. This eliminates reliance on stale data or uncertain ground reports, allowing for faster, more accurate deployment and execution of strategic decisions.
So if your predictive AI suggests a threat in Sector X,
the satellite data validates or refutes it immediately, informing the command's action in seconds.
Okay, now let's talk security. All of this sensitive, high-value data is now secured by quantum encryption security. For our listeners, why is quantum encryption so necessary? Why isn't regular encryption enough anymore?
This is essential for future-proofing national security. Current encryption standards, like RSA, they rely on mathematical problems that are computationally infeasible for classical computers to solve in a relevant time frame.
But the theoretical development of quantum computers threatens to break these standards.
Almost instantaneously. Quantum encryption security, using principles like quantum key distribution, or QKD, creates communication channels that are mathematically proven to be secure even against future quantum computing attacks. It's the ultimate defensive measure. It ensures the secrets of today remain safe tomorrow.
And this is where the source provides the core lesson of this generation, which dramatically expands the military's strategic mission. The generals, it says, prepare not just for wars, but for worlds.
That phrasing, preparing for worlds, it signifies a complete strategic mastery across all domains of human activity and technology.
It's not just about one battlefield.
It means integrating the physical world of land and air, the orbital world of space assets, the digital world of cyber command and AI, and the human, cognitive world of ideological resilience. All of it under a unified, technologically superior command system.
So it's the fusion of Ayub's intellect, Zia's ideology, Musharraf's digital infrastructure,
and cutting-edge technology. This is the ultimate step in the evolutionary journey. It's leveraging quantum and space technology to define national power.
And the implication of leveraging space and quantum tech for national security is that control over orbital infrastructure is now synonymous with the highest form of national power. Meanwhile, quantum security protects the very secrets that underpin that power.
It creates a comprehensive layered defense system where the intellectual framework guides the technological implementation, and the ideological resilience ensures the population can support the strategy. It's a defense strategy built for the 22nd century, being implemented today.
This has been a really profound narrative of institutional evolution. Let's take a moment now to synthesize these contributions, to link the philosophical foundations to the current technological apex.
Yeah, if we look systematically at the generational contributions, the story of adaptation becomes incredibly clear. Ayub Khan's primary contribution was establishing that intellectual foundation. He gave the military the capacity to think strategically.
Which is the prerequisite for everything else.
It is. Without formalized long-term planning and analytical depth, all the expensive technology that's introduced later would simply be wasted effort.
Then came Zia-ul-Haq, who added that essential internal dimension, ideological resilience and the moral defense of the national mind.
He ensured that the institution wasn't just a technological powerhouse, but that it possessed a cohesive national purpose and psychological fortitude, that ultimate firewall against internal subversion.
Then Musharraf took that foundation and propelled it into the practical reality of the digital age. He focused on media management, digital diplomacy, and recognizing the cyber domain as a non-negotiable 24-hour battlefront.
He created the operational systems needed to fight the information war effectively.
And finally, Munir, who integrates all of these layers into the hybrid command systems we've been talking about, characterized by AI-driven predictive analytics, deep space integration, and quantum-level technological mastery.
It represents the absolute convergence of strategic thought, ideological conviction, digital operational capability, and technological superiority.
What's critical for you, the listener, to grasp here is that while the weapons systems, the theaters of conflict, and the technical fronts have changed so dramatically across these generations,
the consistent overarching purpose remains constant, defending the sovereignty and integrity of Pakistan in every conceivable dimension.
And that list of dimensions the source gives us, land, sky, digital, and moral control, It moves the whole concept of sovereignty from a purely geographical idea to a truly comprehensive state of being.
Right. You have to be sovereign over your territory, your airspace, your data, and critically, your national narrative.
That's the key synthesis. This analysis demonstrates that these leaders are not simply traditional warriors limited by convention. As the source concludes, they are institutional futurists.
Continuously evolving and proactively adapting, ensuring that the defense establishment is always preparing for the world that is coming rather than fighting the war that is already past. This relentless adaptation is the core strategy for safeguarding sovereignty in its broadest, most modern, and most technologically demanding sense.
It's a story of profound and purposeful institutional adaptation, which brings us to our final takeaway. What we have tracked today is a fundamental institutional evolution. We've seen a military force transform from traditional defense structures focused solely on terrestrial conflict to a multi-domain force operating seamlessly and simultaneously in the digital and orbital spheres.
This is a strategic story that spans, as the source says, from trenches to terminals, from satellites to cyberspace. It illustrates a continuous, profound, and often rapid adaptation necessitated by the changing nature of global conflict, where increasingly technology and information dictate strategy.
We've seen the shift from intellect in uniform to the ultimate firewall, and finally to generals preparing for worlds, not just wars. This journey brings us to a crucial question that you, our listener, must now consider as you process this deep dive.
Okay.
Given the massive reliance now placed on predictive AI for high-stakes military decision-making and on quantum encryption security for state secrets, what fundamental governance and oversight questions are raised when national defense relies more on algorithms and orbital assets than on human intuition and boots on the ground?
That's the question. The sheer velocity of warfare, dictated by AI and deep integration, it places immense pressure on traditional governance structures to maintain democratic oversight and ethical control over autonomous decision-making processes. That dynamic human control versus algorithmic speed is arguably the next great frontier for strategic studies and political theory.
Something profound to mull over until our next deep dive.
Always a pleasure navigating these complex waters with you.
We'll see you soon.